The night in the Pacific was thick, suffocating and almost impossibly silent, broken only by the gentle lap of waves against hidden shores. The islands stretched like dark, jagged teeth across the horizon, and the dense jungle behind them held secrets that no ordinary map could reveal. Soldiers, scouts, and spies moved cautiously, their senses stretched thin, knowing that one misstep, one careless word, could decide life or death. In the midst of this tense theater, a peculiar tool emerged, one that seemed almost trivial, yet carried immense weight. It was a single word, a word that could save or condemn, a word that seemed absurd, almost playful to the untrained ear. Yet it had the power to unravel identities and expose infiltrators. That word was Lollapalooza. To understand the significance of Lollapalooza, one must first understand the battlefield it operated on. World War II in the Pacific was not only a struggle of firepower, logistics, and strategy. It was a contest of intelligence, deception, and survival. Soldiers were trained to anticipate the unexpected, and intelligence units relied on every tool at their disposal. One of the oldest and most effective techniques in human history, dating back centuries, was the shibboleth, a word or phrase that could distinguish insiders from outsiders, based purely on how it was spoken. Across civilizations, cultures had used subtle differences in pronunciation to determine who belonged and who did not, who was friend and who was foe. In the Pacific theater, where Japanese and Allied forces faced each other across dense jungles, remote islands, and chaotic ports, language became one of the most reliable indicators of identity. Uniforms could be stolen, papers could be forged, and accents could be faked. But the way someone pronounced a specific word often revealed their origin. The word Lollapalooza was chosen not at random. It was long, complex, and contained consonant sounds that were notoriously difficult for native Japanese speakers to articulate in English, particularly under pressure. The letters L and R posed a challenge due to the way Japanese phonetics merged these sounds into a single liquid consonant. To native English speakers, this difference seemed subtle, even trivial. But in high-stress situations, it became glaringly obvious. Soldiers stationed on island checkpoints would call out the word casually, almost as if testing someone's ability to greet or respond to a fellow soldier. Yet beneath the casual tone lay a life-or-death evaluation. Those who mispronounced the word, hesitated, or stumbled often revealed themselves immediately as imposters or spies. This linguistic trap was subtle, but it was devastatingly effective. Imagine a soldier standing under the hot, humid sun, sweat rolling down his forehead, as a figure approaches along the narrow path leading from the docks. The approaching person is dressed in the uniform of an Allied soldier, walking confidently, carrying papers that appear legitimate. Every instinct tells the soldier he is dealing with a friendly comrade. Then comes the test. Lollapalooza, he calls out casually, as though it were an ordinary greeting. The figure pauses. His mouth contorts as he attempts to reproduce the word. Syllables shift, consonants wobble, and the subtle distinction between L and R betrays him. In that split second, the illusion shatters. The soldier knows immediately that this is not an ally, that this is someone who could bring death if left unchecked. That single word has performed the work of hours of surveillance, papers, and questioning. The use of shibboleths like Lollapalooza was not limited to this one example. Across the Pacific, intelligence officers and field commanders devised various linguistic tests to separate friend from foe. These ranged from slang phrases familiar only to native English speakers, to specific colloquialisms and idiomatic expressions, to nonsense words carefully constructed to trip up those who had learned English as a second language. Each test relied on subtle knowledge of phonetics, stress, and accent, exploiting the minute differences that are nearly imperceptible under ordinary circumstances but become pronounced under tension. In some cases, these tests were augmented by additional observations: how a person carried themselves, how they responded to casual questions, how they reacted to unexpected orders. The combination of language, observation, and intuition created a multi-layered defense that few could penetrate successfully. Yet the power of language as a tool in war was not purely mechanical. It carried a psychological weight that could shift the balance of an encounter in an instant. The imposter who failed the test of pronunciation often did so under enormous stress. The knowledge that a single misstep could mean exposure heightened every reaction, slowed every thought, and disrupted every attempt to imitate native speech. Soldiers were trained to recognize these subtle cues: the hesitation, the micropauses, the slight distortion of a consonant. It was not merely the sound of the word that mattered. It was the human reaction to it, the way the body betrayed the mind when faced with impossible pressure. In this sense, Lollapalooza became more than a word. It became a mirror reflecting truth in the chaos of war. Historical records and linguistic studies later analyzed why certain sounds proved so difficult for native Japanese speakers. The Japanese language, with its simpler consonant clusters and vowel-rich syllables, treated certain English sounds in unique ways. The letters L and R, when appearing consecutively in complex words, were particularly prone to alteration. Even highly fluent speakers could struggle to reproduce them exactly, especially when under duress. The very design of Lollapalooza exploited this natural limitation. Its syllables were arranged in a pattern that demanded precision, clarity, and speed. Failure to articulate it correctly was almost guaranteed for those who were not native. English speakers, particularly when fear, adrenaline, and fatigue were factored in. The stakes of these linguistic tests were real and immediate. Behind every checkpoint, on every jungle path, at every dock and airstrip, soldiers were making split-second decisions that could save or end lives. The use of shibboleths was not a casual matter. It was a calculated, scientifically informed tool of survival. And yet, it also carried the weight of ethical complexity. Mispronunciation alone did not always indicate ill intent. Accents, regional differences, and nervousness could all result in errors. Field commanders had to balance caution with fairness, acting swiftly to protect their units while recognizing that language was an imperfect measure. Despite these limitations, the method was remarkably effective, and it became an essential part of the intelligence arsenal in the Pacific Theater. Beyond the immediate utility of Lollapalooza and other shibboleths, these tests reflected a deeper understanding of human communication. Language is not merely a vessel for ideas. It is also a map of identity, a mirror of culture, and a tool that carries subtle markers of origin. In the context of war, these markers become amplified, revealing truths that might otherwise remain hidden. The ability to detect these markers, to read them quickly and accurately, became as crucial as map reading or marksmanship. Soldiers and intelligence, officers who mastered this skill, gained an invisible advantage, one that could turn the tide in localized encounters and save countless lives in the broader strategic picture. The psychological tension surrounding these tests also cannot be overstated. For those approaching checkpoints, the simple act of speaking a word could trigger immense fear. Every muscle tightened, every heartbeat accelerated, as the individual contemplated the possibility of failure. A single mispronounced syllable could lead to detention, interrogation, or worse. And yet, for those who passed the test, the relief was immediate, visceral, and profound. The word became a gatekeeper, a silent arbiter of trust, and a powerful reminder of the stakes of war. In examining the story of Lollapalooza, one begins to see how the ordinary can become extraordinary in extreme circumstances. A word that might seem whimsical or nonsensical in everyday life transforms into a weapon, a shield, and a measure of identity. Its effectiveness relied on a deep understanding of language, culture, and human psychology. It required careful observation, patience, and precise execution. And it demonstrated that even in a world dominated by guns, ships, and aircraft, the subtleties of speech could wield power equal to that of conventional weapons. Even after the war ended, the lessons of shibboleths like Lollapalooza continued to resonate. Linguists studied them to understand the nuances of pronunciation and perception, while military historians analyzed them to appreciate the ingenuity of field intelligence. Today, modern language training programs incorporate similar techniques, teaching learners to master sounds that once determined life or death in far-off jungles and islands. The story serves as a reminder that communication is never neutral. It carries with it history, culture, and consequence. And in the right or wrong hands, even a single word can change everything. The legacy of Lollapalooza is not one of absurdity, but of precision, adaptability, and the remarkable intersection of language and survival. In the silent, humid nights of the Pacific, amid the tension and uncertainty, a word became a sentinel, watching over the soldiers who spoke it, testing the intruders who approached, and shaping the outcome of countless encounters. Its story is a testament to the hidden power of human speech, to the ingenuity of those who wielded it, and to the fragile boundary between life and death that existed at the edge of every battlefield. The morning sun barely pierced the thick canopy of the jungle as the first patrols began their rounds. Mist clung to the leaves and the narrow paths that wound between giant ferns and twisted tree trunks. Soldiers moved with measured caution, eyes scanning shadows, ears attuned to the slightest disturbance. In these early hours, the jungle was deceptively calm, yet every rustle, every cracking branch could signify danger. It was here, amid nature's quiet and the omnipresent threat of human deception, that the word Lollapalooza exerted its influence, silent yet formidable. At remote outposts and along precarious supply lines, the tension was palpable. Guards stood at checkpoints with the authority of life and death in their hands. Travelers, soldiers, and messengers approached with documents that appeared flawless and uniforms that seemed authentic. Many of these individuals had trained meticulously to mimic Allied behavior, to speak English fluently, and to understand the subtleties of American slang. Yet even the most convincing impersonators could not fully escape the subtleties embedded in the language itself. The word, seemingly whimsical and inconsequential, acted as a final filter, a linguistic tripwire capable of revealing hidden truths. The effectiveness of Lollapalooza lay not only in its pronunciation difficulty, but also in the psychological pressure it imposed. Human beings, when confronted with high-stakes decisions, often falter in the simplest tasks. A normally fluent speaker can stumble, hesitate, or distort words when fear tightens the chest and adrenaline floods the veins. In such moments, the sound of a single word can betray more than hours of observation or scrutiny. Soldiers at these checkpoints learned to recognize the subtle signs. A brief flicker of confusion in the eyes, a tremor in the voice, the unnatural rhythm of stressed syllables. Each of these small indicators became part of a larger tapestry of truth, woven together by keen observation and experience. Consider the hypothetical scenario of a small coastal village, converted into a makeshift Allied base. Supplies were being delivered by boat, and messengers moved back and forth between islands. Among them, a stranger appeared, wearing an Allied uniform and speaking with polished confidence. He carried papers that looked perfectly legitimate. To an untrained observer, there was nothing unusual about him. But when the checkpoint guard casually called out, "Lollapalooza," the imposter hesitated, mispronounced the first syllable, and corrected himself awkwardly. In that instant, all pretense fell away. The guard knew that this was no ordinary visitor. The word had performed its silent duty, exposing the infiltrator without need for prolonged interrogation or confrontation. Such encounters were not rare. Across the Pacific, intelligence officers reported that imposters, even those highly trained in English, often stumbled when confronted with carefully chosen words. Some words exploited consonant clusters that were foreign to Japanese phonology. Others incorporated vowel sequences that challenged natural stress patterns. Some were entirely nonsensical, chosen solely to elicit a revealing reaction. In every case, the principle remained the same. A word, if chosen correctly, could function as a key, unlocking truth hidden behind layers of disguise. The use of shibboleths in this context also reveals the ingenuity and adaptability of Allied forces. Commanders understood that traditional defenses, barriers, guns, and patrols were insufficient on their own. The enemy could imitate uniforms, falsify documents, and blend into civilian populations. Language, however, is far more resistant to mimicry, especially under stress. By exploiting these linguistic vulnerabilities, Allied forces created a new layer of defense, one that complemented conventional strategies while introducing a subtle yet powerful psychological component. Historians and linguists later examined these tactics in detail. They discovered that the human brain is wired to detect anomalies in speech patterns. Even slight deviations in pronunciation, timing, or stress can be perceived almost subconsciously by trained listeners. In high-pressure situations, these deviations become magnified, providing critical information in seconds. The case of Lollapalooza exemplifies this principle perfectly. It was not merely a word. It was a test, a diagnostic tool, and a shield, all rolled into one. Beyond the mechanics of pronunciation, the story of Lollapalooza underscores the human dimension of war. Soldiers had to make life-or-death decisions in the heat of the moment, relying on intuition as much as training. They faced moral dilemmas. Was a mispronunciation sufficient grounds for detaining or confronting someone? Could fear, nervousness, or fatigue be mistaken for deception? In these moments, the line between caution and cruelty became razor-thin. Yet despite the ethical complexity, the word remained a critical instrument in a theater where certainty was rare and stakes were unimaginably high. The strategic importance of linguistic tests extended beyond individual encounters. In broader intelligence operations, such tools helped secure supply chains, protect communication networks, and safeguard critical installations. By identifying potential infiltrators quickly, forces could act decisively to prevent sabotage, intercept critical intelligence leaks, and maintain operational integrity. Language in this context became an unsung weapon, silent, invisible, but profoundly effective. Interestingly, the psychological impact of Lollapalooza extended to those who were aware of its use. The mere knowledge that such a test could occur instilled caution, shaping behavior in subtle ways. Soldiers moving through checkpoints became more aware of their speech, more attentive to the nuances of their interactions. The enemy, knowing that language could betray them, had to constantly prepare for a wide array of unpredictable tests. In this sense, the word functioned as a deterrent as much as a diagnostic tool, influencing both sides of the conflict without a single shot being fired. The story also illuminates the intersection of linguistics and human behavior in extreme conditions. It highlights how phonetic patterns, cultural habits, and stress responses interact to produce observable differences in communication. It demonstrates that language is not static. It is dynamic, flexible, and context-dependent. And in moments of crisis, these characteristics can become decisive. A word that might seem trivial in peacetime transforms into a powerful instrument capable of shaping outcomes, protecting lives, and revealing truth. Moreover, the legacy of shibboleths, like Lollapalooza, reaches into modern understanding of phonetics, language acquisition, and intelligence practices. Linguists study similar principles to understand how non-native speakers acquire sounds, how accents influence perception, and how subtle speech patterns reveal information about identity and origin. Military training programs now incorporate these lessons, teaching soldiers and intelligence officers to recognize and interpret linguistic cues with precision and care. The methods developed in the Pacific Theater continue to inform contemporary practices, illustrating the enduring relevance of this historical insight. The human stories behind these tests are compelling and often overlooked. Consider the soldiers stationed at isolated outposts, the quiet tension in their daily routines, and the fleeting moments of judgment that could determine life or death. They carried not only weapons but knowledge, observation skills, and an acute awareness of human psychology. They were the guardians of language, using a single word as a gatekeeper, a sentinel standing between safety and disaster. Each successful test reinforced the subtle truth. Language, when wielded skillfully, could be as decisive as a battle plan or a strategic maneuver. Even the imposters themselves faced immense psychological pressure. Those trained to mimic accents and speech patterns knew that failure could mean immediate exposure. The cognitive load of maintaining deception while anticipating unexpected linguistic challenges was immense. Under such conditions, even the most skilled actors faltered. The choice of a single word, carefully designed to exploit natural phonetic weaknesses, became an almost surgical tool, identifying the disguised enemy with precision and speed. The story of Lollapalooza also invites reflection on the broader human capacity for adaptation. In extreme circumstances, ordinary tools, language, observation, intuition are transformed into extraordinary instruments of survival. Soldiers, intelligence officers, and field operatives demonstrated remarkable ingenuity, recognizing opportunities in the ordinary and converting them into decisive advantages. The word itself, whimsical and seemingly inconsequential, becomes emblematic of the larger human struggle to navigate uncertainty, assess risk, and act decisively under pressure. In many ways, the saga of Lollapalooza is a story of contrasts, the playful versus the deadly, the ordinary versus the extraordinary, the spoken word versus the silent threat it carried. It exemplifies how minute details can carry disproportionate weight in high-stakes environments. A single syllable articulated under duress could unlock hidden truths, protect lives, and influence the course of operations across vast, chaotic theaters of war. It is a testament to the enduring power of human ingenuity, linguistic insight, and the subtle interplay between culture, language, and survival. Even after the battles ended and the jungles fell silent, the echoes of these linguistic tests remain. Historians, linguists, and intelligence analysts examined the principles behind shibboleths, tracing their origins, applications, and enduring lessons. They saw in Lollapalooza more than a curious anecdote. They recognized a microcosm of human behavior under extreme stress, a case study in the intersection of culture, communication, and strategy. Its legacy transcended the immediate wartime context, influencing the study of language, perception, and human interaction for generations to come. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson, the islands of the Pacific seemed almost serene. But beneath this deceptive calm, the echoes of tension persisted. Soldiers and intelligence operatives remained vigilant, fully aware that danger could emerge at any moment, hidden behind the mask of normalcy. Even in the quietest hours, the world was defined by uncertainty, deception, and the subtle battle of wits that often determined who would survive the night. And at the heart of this invisible war was a singular, peculiar weapon, the word Lollapalooza. The power of this word, and others like it, lay not only in its immediate function, but also in its ability to expose the psychology of human beings under extreme stress. War, especially in the Pacific Theater, was not fought solely with guns, planes, or artillery. It was fought in the minds of individuals, in the microseconds of hesitation, the minute inflections of speech, the brief flicker of doubt in a soldier's eyes. A word like Lollapalooza forced people into a crucible of cognition and fear. It stripped away performance, revealing the truths hidden beneath layers of preparation, training, and deception. The imposter who stumbled, hesitated, or mispronounced was not simply failing a linguistic exercise. They were revealing the fragile boundaries of human ability under pressure. There are accounts, both documented and anecdotal, of soldiers recalling the immense tension that surrounded these linguistic tests. One officer described the moment as a silent duel, a confrontation, without a single shot fired. Both parties knew the stakes, yet all action was compressed into a single word, a single utterance. The imposter approached, confident in their disguise, trained in speech and mannerisms, believing they could move through the checkpoint unnoticed. Then came the word, the test, a pause, the mispronunciation, and just like that, the illusion shattered. Lives hung in the balance for a moment, measured not in hours, but in syllables. It is important to understand that the success of these tests did not rest solely on phonetics. Context, observation, and intuition played equally critical roles. Soldiers trained themselves to read subtle body language, micro-expressions, and behavioral cues. The word Lollapalooza was a trigger, but the surrounding observation completed the picture. If a person mispronounced the word but displayed consistent confidence and composure, it might indicate nervousness rather than deception. If hesitation accompanied suspicious gestures or mismatched paperwork, it confirmed the guard's instincts. In this way, language and observation were fused into a single, holistic intelligence tool, one that was far more sophisticated than it might first appear. The stakes of these interactions highlight the precariousness of wartime ethics. A mispronounced syllable could lead to immediate suspicion, questioning, or detention. Soldiers had to make rapid decisions, weighing caution against fairness, and lives hung in the balance with every choice. Yet, despite these moral complexities, the tests were extraordinarily effective. They exposed infiltrators, protected supply lines, and safeguarded operational security in ways that traditional defenses could not. In the chaos of war, where uncertainty reigned supreme, the power of language became both a shield and a weapon. The broader strategic implications of these linguistic tests are equally fascinating. Intelligence networks relied on quick and accurate verification of personnel. Supply chains could be compromised by a single imposter. Communications could be intercepted, and vital information could be lost or exploited by the enemy. By incorporating linguistic tests like Lollapalooza, commanders created an additional layer of security that operated at the intersection of psychology, culture, and phonetics. The word itself became a subtle yet decisive instrument, capable of protecting entire units and ensuring operational integrity across vast and often inaccessible regions. In retrospect, the ingenuity behind these tests reflects a profound understanding of human behavior and cognition. Linguists and military analysts have since explored the mechanisms that made such words effective. Consonant clusters, vowel patterns, and stress sequences interact with neurological processing in ways that make mispronunciation almost inevitable under duress. Adrenaline, fear, fatigue, and the cognitive load of maintaining a deception amplify these effects. In essence, Lollapalooza was carefully engineered to exploit the natural limitations of human speech and cognition, turning a simple utterance into a finely tuned instrument of survival. The human stories behind these linguistic encounters are just as compelling as the mechanics themselves. Soldiers stationed on remote outposts often recounted the tension, the anticipation, and the adrenaline that accompanied each checkpoint. The stakes were immediate and visceral. They described the surreal quality of these encounters, a calm greeting, a casual word, and yet the weight of the world resting on the correct pronunciation. Even after the threat passed, these moments lingered in memory, a testament to the extraordinary pressure that language imposed in these extraordinary circumstances. For the imposters, the experience was equally intense. Trained in speech, mannerisms, and behavior, they had to navigate a minefield of unpredictable challenges. One small mistake, a mispronounced syllable, a delayed response, an unnatural intonation could expose them instantly. The cognitive demands were immense, requiring flawless execution under extreme stress. And yet, the simplicity of the test belied its effectiveness. A single word, chosen with care and precision, became a gatekeeper, a measure of competence, and a sentinel of security. The legacy of these practices extends far beyond the immediate wartime context. Linguists study them to understand the interaction between phonetics, perception, and cognition. Military training programs continue to incorporate similar principles, teaching officers to recognize subtle cues in speech and behavior. Modern intelligence operations, while technologically advanced, still rely on the fundamental insight that human communication carries hidden markers of identity and intent. The story of Lollapalooza exemplifies this timeless principle. Even in an era of radar code-breaking and sophisticated surveillance, the power of language remains formidable. Reflecting on the story, one is struck by the dual nature of Lollapalooza. On one hand, it is whimsical, almost playful, a word that would seem absurd outside the context of war. On the other hand, it is deadly serious, a finely calibrated tool that determined trust, revealed deception, and protected lives. This contrast between the lighthearted appearance and the lethal function underscores the ingenuity of those who devised such tests. It also serves as a reminder that in extreme circumstances, ordinary elements of life, speech, observation, intuition, can become extraordinary instruments of survival. Moreover, the story of Lollapalooza highlights a fundamental truth about human nature. Under stress, the mind and body reveal more than we intend. Fear, anxiety, and cognitive load all manifest in subtle ways, through speech patterns, pauses, and gestures. Soldiers learn to read these signs, to detect deception where others saw only normal interaction. The word itself was a trigger, a key that unlocked the hidden layers of human behavior. In this sense, Lollapalooza was not just a linguistic test. It was a window into the mind, a measure of truth in an otherwise uncertain world. The enduring fascination with this story stems from its simplicity and profundity. It is a tale of survival, intelligence, and human ingenuity condensed into a single word. It is a story that demonstrates how subtle understanding, keen observation, and careful application of knowledge can achieve results that brute force alone cannot. It teaches that in moments of crisis, the ordinary can become extraordinary, and the smallest details, the sound of a syllable, the inflection of a voice, can have consequences as significant as any battle plan. Even decades later, historians, linguists, and military analysts continue to study these practices, seeking to understand the precise mechanisms that made them effective. They recognize the brilliance of using language as both a shield and a probe, the insight required to exploit human vulnerabilities without causing unnecessary harm, and the delicate balance between precision, observation, and ethical judgment. The story of Lollapalooza remains a testament to the ingenuity of those who fought in the Pacific Theater, to the enduring power of language, and to the extraordinary lengths humans will go to survive and protect one another in times of extreme danger. Ultimately, the tale of Lollapalooza is a reminder that war is fought, not only with weapons but with knowledge, perception, and subtlety. It shows that a single word, chosen with insight and applied with skill, can wield influence far beyond its size or appearance. It illuminates the intersection of psychology, linguistics, and strategy, and offers a glimpse into the hidden dimensions of warfare, where language itself becomes a battlefield. The islands may now be silent, the soldiers long gone, but the story endures, a story of words, survival, and the extraordinary power hidden in the ordinary. Lollapalooza may sound whimsical to a modern ear, but in the jungles and ports of the Pacific during World War II, it was no joke. It was a test of character, a measure of identity, and a tool of survival. It reminds us that even in the chaos of history, the smallest elements, sounds, syllables, words can carry consequences as profound as any weapon. And as we reflect on this story today, we see not only the ingenuity of those who used it, but also the enduring lesson that knowledge, observation, and understanding, applied with care and insight, can shape outcomes, protect lives, and reveal truths in ways that are as subtle as they are powerful. If you enjoyed this documentary, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more incredible World War II stories. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps support the channel.